You never know. I believe in that feeling of like at any moment, and to keep that kind of faith and positivity alive in a time when things can feel dark or scary. You'll see it if you can start to see it more when you're looking for it and like open to that. Oh, okay, Day, what do you have for me? It's hard though.
I'm Melanie Barr. Welcome back to the She Built It podcast, your go-to place to empower you to live the life and business that you crave. I'm here to talk about everything from having the courage to make life and career leaps to the details of how to lead effectively, create successful teams, implement strategies for growth, and infuse tech innovation. I'm here to celebrate your wins and navigate through your challenges. I live in the city now, but I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. I've navigated major life leaps, a senior level corporate career, worked in professional sports, and now as a successful entrepreneur who loves business, technology, family, and making meaningful connections with you and the She Built It community. I also love a good workout and dose of self-care. Magic happens when we focus on the part of ourselves and our business that brings us joy. So turn up the audio, open your favorite notes app, grab your favorite drink, and here we go. Welcome back to the She Built It podcast. Thank you for joining us, Maggie.
Thank you for having me, Melanie. It's crazy. We both have pods we've been doing for years, and yet we're both like, oh, who's going to start?
Tell us about your journey into acting and what inspired you to go into entertainment.
I think back on this now. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I did my first play. I earned my first paycheck, my first professional acting paycheck at 8 years old in a musical theater. It's called Musical Theater of Louisville. I don't think it exists anymore. It was a great program. I was a Munchkin in The Wizard of Oz. I know this sounds crazy. That was it. 8, 10, I did another play. Annie. I played Annie. I was so terrible. I was so bad. I think they were like, why did they pick this girl? They had to triple cast it because we were so young and they couldn't have us doing multiple shows. It was like our dinner theater, and it was a show every night except for Mondays, and then 2 on Wednesdays and 2 on Sundays. And so they triple cast us. And I always say Ashley could act and Brandy could do a lot of all of it and was pretty good at all of it. And I could sing. I'm telling you, I can admit, I think acting at that point I got the job, I think, because of my singing. And probably I was very eager. I was very excited to learn, but they assigned us mentors, the kids. So there were the orphans in Annie, and they assigned everybody a mentor from the adult cast. I'm sure they loved that. And because Melissa, who was mine, was at first, I'm not really great with kids. She told me this like off the bat.
And you're like, great.
Cool. 10, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And my mom isn't here. And then the guy who played the Daddy Warbucks was this guy named Yule. And I talk about this experience because I think this is when I fell in love with not just the performing part, but the family part and the connecting with people parts. And those two people were friends. So Melissa and Yule were friends, but it was really Yule who took me I don't know why. He was this gruff, tough, like he'd been on Broadway. He had done so much and then would occasionally come back and do these plays. So for him, it was almost, I don't know. I think
He
back
saw
on this
something
now,
in you.
we clicked for sure. And he became almost like a second dad to me for years. But during this play, during the rehearsals, he pretty much said to me, let's improve this. Let's work on this. And I remember saying, I know I'm not as good. I could memorize and I could sing, but I knew I wasn't delivering the way that the other kids were. And so when he said this to me, I remember where we were sitting in the theater and I remember looking at him and being like, okay, what can I do? And he started giving me little notes. And over the few weeks that were left of rehearsals, I just connected up with him, which the character does in the play, and listened to him, and he guided me. And it was from that experience. Any play I did going forward, even before I came out to LA, he'd run lines with me. He would do monologues with me. I still don't know what made him do that, but he became my mentor. He became the person who taught me. And I remember he was just like, just listen. Don't wait for your line. Don't wait for your cue. Don't just listen to the other person. And then by, I would say, the end of that run, I can almost cry thinking about it now. I sobbed on stage on my last curtain call. And then from that point forward, it became something else. It was the theater community. It was acting. It was all of that. I ended up getting very lucky. There was a huge like cattle call for this fun little kids network that was on the Fox station in Louisville. Also, the year I was 10, this was like the year all of this sort of happened. And I ended up hosting from the time I was 10 until the time I moved to LA, which was just out of high school, hosting this show in the afternoons for kids on this Fox station. Everything from safety tips for your candy at Halloween to interviewing kids. Like I interviewed Chris Cross, if you remember
Wow,
them.
yes. How fun of a thing for you to be doing at 10. That's amazing.
It's wild to think I've earned a paycheck since I was 8 years old, but that helped pay for a lot of things growing up, like if I needed extra things for school. But I also loved hosting. I loved the journalism part. So then I didn't know which way I was going to go. And then these doors just opened for me to come to LA. That road is the road I went down, and I have loved every second of it. I have done this since I was 8 years old, and it's still what I love to do. But during the pandemic, I was like, I still have this thing that I want to host. And here I am at 40. I turned 40 in the pandemic, and I haven't done it since I was 16 or 17 years old, basically. But it's always been something I wanted to explore. That's how I got into acting and how I discovered my love of hosting. And then now I feel lucky that I get to do both. And podcasting is such a fun, connective, it's interesting and fun to talk to people and learn things and then share those things. The Psych one that we do, that's really connected to, because that's a rewatch of a show I did.
As you were saying all that, I thought you're back in your hosting, and his advice to you is so perfect for podcasting, because podcasting and interviewing is listening and sharing the incredible stories. I think I have an MBA from all of the incredible women that I have spoken with over 3 years, with all of the advice from leadership to building teams to overcoming failures, what to do to celebrate when you have these amazing wins, how to keep going through a pandemic when everything shuts down. Like, it's incredible to listen to all the stories of all of the incredible women across the world.
It's wild what you've built. And also she built it. It's just an incredible, the whole thing, the brand, you and women, like so many women and all those topics that it all falls under. She built it. It's really impressive. I'm still working on figuring out one that I have, one of the podcasts.
We can't wait to hear.
And the brands that I have. But even the one I have going, I'm fascinated by every single person I talk to. And it could be something I knew absolutely nothing about. I had a hypnotherapist on. We had like a healing month.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
It was. But talking about wandering into these topics, as you just said, you learn so much. But it is listening.
And we all need that healing in one way or another. So it's interesting that you did a month on healing. If we're in business or we're running families, there's always things that we can do to look inside. So let's talk a little bit about Psych.
Yeah.
Because it's funny. I met you years ago and then started watching Psych during COVID. I was at home with my twins and trying not to lose my mind. And I thought, I need a show to watch at night that is fun and that my kids can also watch. And we completely fell in love with the show. And I will admit, in the first few episodes, I was busy with 2 5-year-olds running around, and they don't sit to watch a show. They wrestle and it's stop wrestling. And anyway, so Jonathan walked in and he said, "Isn't that Maggie Lawson?" And I said, "It is." And by that time, we had so fallen in love with the show. And you kept me from the first, and we watched it every episode through for 3 times. Just every night. It was something that we looked forward to doing. And I asked Parker now, I'm like, what were your favorite episodes and scenes? And she knows we remembered the one, your very first episode where you're in the diner. And then we also liked the one where you had the woman who was copying you.
Yeah. I love that you all love that one. No one ever talks about that one. Like the single white female thing. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
It was a completely, probably because I'm like, ooh, that's a little terrifying. I mean, in real life, but it was a memorable one.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
And we just loved the show.
So I would finish Psych in 2013 and I met you shortly after that. So it was already in the past. Yeah.
And I hadn't really watched the show until during COVID. What's something non-cartoon that is okay enough for the kids? And Psych popped up and I thought, oh, what is this? And then we watched it every episode through at least 3 times. It was our fun thing to look forward to at the end of a crazy day, too much togetherness, and we needed to laugh.
This is one of my favorite things about Psych that I still hear. Obviously, while we were filming it, we had such a good time. And I remember from the very beginning, James, Sean, who plays the lead of the show, said to us, it was like a family. It was one of those weird lightning struck. It really was a magical thing that happened from day one of all of us together, where it was like, wow, we feel like we've been working together. We feel like we've known each other forever. We're having so much fun. And James said, let's try to have the audience feel like that. Let's try to make the audience feel the love that we feel so they want to hang out with us every week, because that's ultimately what this is, right?
It's so true. We did it every day because it was so well cast. And
every day.
Just the chemistry of all of you was just so perfect. So good. And then one other memorable moment was when Tim Carlton was promoted to chief. I have never seen, my daughter sat up and was like clapping. She was full on like clapping and biggest smile. I wish I had it on video because she was like so proud and happy for him to finally become the chief. And near the end, it was so adorable because she felt like she knew him.
Yeah. She went on the whole journey with him.
And here she's this, I think at the time, 7 or 8 year old. It was so adorable.
I love that so much. And I am going to tell Tim that because he will also love that so much. And we must meet her. But that is probably one of the most like heartwarming things about the show is that now, so here we are, we wrapped the show. I think the last airing was in 2014. So 10 years later, we are doing this tour. So we have our podcast now that we started during the pandemic where we rewatch the episodes. And now we're doing live shows in all of these cities, like across the US. And the thing that I hear the most and that I love the most is that so many people come up and say, I knew of this show, but I discovered it recently. And I love that I can watch it with my kids. And like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be a cartoon, or we get the people saying, oh, I watched this when it was on and now I'm rewatching it with my little ones. That just makes me so happy that after all this time, I mean, they just premiered Psych on Netflix in the UK and Australia. And we've been in the top 10 for 2 weeks there.
Really? I love it. I'll have to tell my friends in Australia.
It blows my mind.
It's funny and there's a little bit of the mystery. It's very entertaining.
It's entertaining and it's light.
And it has a crazy following. So many people. I remember you and I we were at Step Up Inspiration Awards and we went to check in, and it runs all ages too, because she looked up at you and was like, I love Psych. It was just the reaction. And I was like, I feel you. I understand. We love the show. Like my family loves the show too. I completely understood her reaction.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. The fans call themselves psychos. And so it's a funny thing. I always have to say, oh, the psychos are the best and the psychos are this. And I'm like, wait, they gave themselves that name. That is not a name we gave them or anything like that. But the following is not the most massive, but it's the most dedicated and loyal. Oh my God.
A lot of heart. And I think when you hear Psycho and you know the show, it's funny. Psycho is funny, not Psycho like scary Psycho. Yeah, it's funny, we care and love this show so much. We're Psychos about it.
Yeah, it's very funny. And it's been like this weird thing. You hear so much about obviously do what you love and go where the energy is and go with that flow. And like, I think about Psych, the love is still so alive among us and among the show. It's still very present to all of us, even though it was 10 years ago. And granted, we've made these reunion movies every couple of years, hoping to still make another. So we've been able to keep the characters alive and the show alive and all of that. But more than that, same thing from like day one that we felt of, whoa, we have a really special thing here. Rarely does 48 hours go by that we're not all lighting up we have a Psych family text chain. But we are doing a Psych convention in Chicago. I know, you should come.
So fun. I would love to come.
It's in Chicago, June 8th and 9th. I don't know if you can,
but
we'll do more.
So fun. We just fell in love with the show. It brought us so much happiness during such a hard time. In addition to being the amazing show it is, it really got our family through a lot of COVID. We literally were not leaving the house. And then the kids were at home. Elliot did not go to one day of in-person first grade. Parker went to probably a month of first grade. But Elliot, he was asked to draw a picture of himself in first grade, and he drew himself sitting at his desk looking at his iPad. Now he's a kid who's outside and he's fine, thankfully. It was such a hard time. At one point, they closed the beach and they closed the parks. And what are you going to do? So we really looked forward to the show. It brought us so much happiness during that time. And I know a lot of people went through sickness, but for our family going through that time, it was so uplifting for us.
Makes me so happy. That's the other thing. Again, it's that feeling of, wow, we did this show. This just became like a love fest. Like it really did. And so to hear that and to hear that other people felt like what we feel making it and for each other, that's the dream, I think, when you're doing something you love. I have heard this a lot. I think a lot of people discovered it during COVID, but I feel like when we go do these live shows, we get to have a very up close and personal experience with the Psych fans or psychos. And a lot of them have shared these stories of how one person said she had suffered from PTSD. She's a veteran, and her therapist now has "Are you okay?" checklist, and it's Psych is always "Are you watching Psych?" is like at the top of the list. That's what she like shared with me when I saw her the last time. We're so blessed that we get to make and hopefully still get to make this really special, funny, unique, weird show and have so much fun doing it. But to think that it brings that kind of joy or connectiveness, or in that case, healing or whatever to other people, we feel so lucky. I still think about how even Psych came into my life and where we all were when it showed up, and you just never know. One phone call. That's one of the crazy things about this business or any business. It's a wild, on any day you wake up and you don't know.
And you could meet that one person, or like you said, that one call that changes the course of your life or your business.
Yes. Everything.
Amazing.
You never know. I believe in that feeling of like at any moment, and to keep that kind of like faith and positivity, I guess, would be the alive in a time when things can feel dark or scary. You'll see it if you can start to see it more, if when you're looking for it and like open to that. Oh, okay, Day, what do you have for me? It's hard though.
I love that outlook though, to ask. Because we go through our day and we're so scheduled and we have all our apps and our platforms and everything. But I love how you just said, okay, Day, what do you have for me? Instead of,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
how are you taking on the day?
We'll go through our steps. We'll do the things that we need to do. But at any given moment, there's something magical about that keeps a certain, hopefully, like spark of possibility alive. Yeah.
So tell us about the podcast that you're doing with Tim.
Oh my gosh. It's so fun. So in 2021, I have a friend who has a podcast company. I was talking to him about some ideas. And in the process of developing or talking about pitching some ideas, I started to think of like things I love to talk about, people I love. And I was like, oh, that's Psych and these people. And why are we not doing a podcast about Psych? But I also felt Steve, who created Psych, and James and Dulé, who were the stars of Psych, I was also like, this should be their story or their perspective to share. So I went to Steve, who is the greatest. He's our creator. He's been the most collaborative, kind, creative, amazing showrunner. And I was like, look, I had this idea and I love it, but also I feel like I should run this by you and it should be, I don't know, if you want to make it, you should. But he was like, absolutely not. Go make it. Love it. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And then it took me a minute to be like, all right, now I got to do it. But I went to James and I went to Dulé both. And James first, who was the same. He was busy and just, you take this. And you and Tim, it was always like, obviously Tim, us being the partners on the show, we should do that together. But I also wanted Dulé's input too. And if that's something he wanted to do. So there were like a few blessings I felt I needed or were necessary. And nobody was really like doing a podcast or wanted to do a podcast. So I called Tim, and Tim, I think for a moment was a little overwhelmed at the time.
A lot goes into it. A lot goes into it.
So much more than It even seems. So when I pitched it to him, Tim was at that point a few years out from, he'd had a stroke in 2017. He's one of the most incredible, inspirational, talk about just believing and like a miracle. Like he's incredible. And so I think for a minute he was getting a little overwhelmed by the technical part of it. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that should be James or maybe that should be Dulé. I was like, all right. And I called him back and I was like, all right, what if I'll do everything? Like all you have to do is show up and all we have to do is tell stories of our favorite show. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm in. So he just needed a minute. We tell this story because it's so funny now to think back on how those first conversations went.
The technical side of things sometimes can become overwhelming if that's not a certain strength.
1,000%. Like that is, even for me initially, I didn't even know one thing. If you would have told me 2 years ago when this thing started that we'd be on a live tour going to 10 or 12 cities this year doing this podcast.
I love it. It's so fun.
There's so many podcasts now. Even just last year when I launched Me Time was a very different experience than just like couple of years ago. I think there are double the amount of podcasts. It's crazy now.
Yeah. I started 5 years ago and it was much different than it is today.
You were so smart. That's another thing. The day we announced it, we just did it like a social media. We didn't even do a press release or anything. It went to #1.
Amazing.
In subscriptions. I have a picture around here somewhere. Yeah, that I was like, oh, okay, the psychos are still with us.
It's a huge following, I'm sure.
It was huge. That was really beautiful. That was like okay, this was the right thing to do. And then we just started making it. And it's just been the most fun reliving of memories and keeping them alive. And then to have it turn into this tour is what?
I've seen the videos and your social from the tour, and everyone is just so excited to come and see you and talk to you. And my husband and I are in the assisted living business. We are helping. And I always say they're not my parents, grandparents, or children, but they're someone's. And we are helping others have a better life. And you are going to come and see them in Oklahoma City. And we're so excited for you to come to
I'm so excited. Yeah, Tim and I both. Tim's coming as well. And I'm honored that you asked. And we're beyond happy to do it. And I love that you all do that.
I have to ask about the pineapple because Parker loved the pineapple. And she's like, where's the pineapple in this episode? I mean, another fun thing that is fun to look for.
Oh my gosh.
Especially as a 10-year-old.
It's a fun game. It's actually the first thing we usually talk about on the podcast too, is did you find the pineapple? I still can't find the pineapple in half of the episodes. I'm telling you. Do you know that started? It was a totally improv line. It was not even in the script. It's from the pilot. And James grabs a pineapple off of a refrigerator in an apartment. I think he's in Dulé's apartment actually, and grabs it and said, should I slice this up for the road? It was not in the script. There was no pineapple, anything. We were not pushing a pineapple. We didn't have that. And then it became the symbol of the show and it still remains to this day. But that's how it began. And then it was like, oh, let's do the pineapple again. The pineapple was so out of place in this person's apartment. There was also something in that pilot that became a runner, which was they discovered, and they were not friends before Psych. It's the chemistry between James and Dulé is incredible, but they would just break into song. And there's a psych out of Man in the Mirror that happens. And so we call them psych outs now but it just started as a silly blooper where they one would just start singing something and the other one would start harmonizing or adding in their bits. And it was not planned. They didn't know each other. This was not like a lifelong thing they had done. It just naturally flowed. They just naturally are incredible together. And it became what we called psych outs, which I wonder if you all have ever seen, because for some reason they're not on Peacock.
No, I have I have never seen them. And Dulé is such an amazing dancer. So I can only imagine. And they're just, the casting of the two of them, putting them in a room together was so brilliant because you can see it.
I think they're on YouTube. See if you can find the psych outs. James and Dulé have so many and they're out of control. And a lot of times we would tag in guest stars and people. We had so much fun and we had no idea We didn't know until we did a Comic-Con. We were in Vancouver. USA at the time was a growing network, but it certainly wasn't one of the big, even one of the big cable networks at that point. It was like out of nowhere, Monk, Psych, and the ones that went on from there. But we were in our little bubble in Vancouver. Psych didn't air there. We had no idea of our following or if we had fans, if anybody was really watching. Like we just didn't know. And then a couple years in, we got invited to San Diego Comic-Con, the big one. And they said that they were putting us in like ballroom H or whatever the big ballroom is there where they put like movies and things. And we were like, that's going to be embarrassing. We're going to have the first few rows and like our little show. Tim and I were just talking about it the other day. I just remember us being backstage before going out for our panel and getting a glimpse out, and it was standing room only. And we were like our little show, our little psych show. It was so crazy. It was really cool. And then our team was so smart in like the early days of using social media. Twitter was fairly new, but our publicists on the show got our Twitter going right away and then got all of us on there right away. And it became a way for us to connect with fans and do fun polls and do just stuff that you couldn't do before social media. And I think that also really helped us connect with psychos and gave a little bit more of an intimate fan experience because we feel like our psychos are the extended family. We have our cast, obviously. Yeah, I could talk about it forever, obviously. You're like, tell me about Psych. I'm like, Melanie.
I mean, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
What are you working on today? And what are the projects and things that are near and dear to you?
Wow. I love how you put that. There are lots of things, but things that are near and dear to me. One in particular, I'll just tease, I guess, because I can't really talk about yet, but I'm going to be launching another podcast in the next couple of months on a topic that is very close to my heart. This was the podcast that I was originally pitching before it was like, oh, we should make a psych pod. And so the psych pod became the priority. So I'll say that's probably still Psych, the tour, and that whole experience of going to these like conventions and Comic-Cons and meeting people has really been an incredible experience. It came out of nowhere.
I'm sure it brings energy too. It's got to bring you, it's so much energy.
It's energy, it's excitement, it's the planning. It's so funny because on the acting side of things, which is still going and still alive and all of that. It's funny. I feel like I've had these things that for a long time that I'm like, oh, I want to try that or I want to do that. And I feel like over the last few years, I've been throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing where the energy is. But I love this. I love that. I love a lot of things. But the podcasts have been really fun and a weird pivot because I literally only acted other than having this small animal foundation that we started in 2014. That, of course, is like super close to my heart, and certain things I'll be doing in the future won't surprise anybody because of that. Other than that, on a business side of things, I haven't really done anything other than what I do, which is acting until I was 40 and in the middle of a pandemic. And then in the last few years, by doing the podcast and kind of understanding and learning that process, I've also had to put a business hat on in a way I never have before. So now I'm learning about that side of things. So I feel like I've been really in a dense period of learning new things, and I love all of it. But I will tell you, and I can't say what this is yet, but I'm working on a project, actually developing a project in the world, a TV project that I'm so excited about with actually James from Psych. So he's a part of that, and that's very exciting. And then I have the Psychologists Are In, which just brings me endless joy, and the tour with that. And I have Me Time, which I love. That one has been a little more tricky because it's just me. And I don't have Tim there with me co-hosting. And also it's a bit more vulnerable, which is way more scary. So I have moments with that where I'm like jumping into something and I'm really excited about it. And then I'll be like, oh, wait, was I ready for that? Am I going too far with that? So that one has been probably, in a weird way, it has been a project that I've been doing. It's also been the most confronting, I think, for me, and highlighting my
to stretch yourself.
Correct.
And it is harder. I like to collaborate. So when you're doing something solo, that sometimes can be more challenging. And you've always used your voice, but it seems with podcasting, you're using your true voice and your true self and who you truly are. Because you've always had a voice, but it seems podcasting is your authentic voice and your true self.
More scary. It's a lot easier to play a character and read someone else's lines. It's harder to, as you just said, you have to be yourself, which I think has made me learn so much about myself in this process, good and bad, that I work through. So me time has really truly been that in a lot of ways. Me time has been my me time.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, properly named.
Properly named, exactly. So yeah, I'd say that I'm very excited about the new podcast, and then I'm very excited about this TV idea, and I'm always excited about the psychologists are in. And then I love me time too, because it's always keeping me on my toes. And wait, what else? Oh, I'm doing an animated show, which I know I can talk about. It's wild. This like whole community, they're called Cool Cats. And I know there's a lot around like crypto and NFT and all of that, but this was an NFT that took off and it still has a huge community and like following behind. And they've taken the NFT, they're this cat and a bird, and there are other characters that are very cute. And they've made these digital shorts, and I'm voicing the bird, Joe, and then also producing that as well. So that's been a whole.
And where can you see the shorts?
The first two they did release, and I think through YouTube. And then you can also go to the Cool Cats Instagrams, because they're shorts. So they're only a minute and a half a piece. They're so cute. Oh my gosh. I think you're
Elliot, I'm sure. I can't wait to play one for him and say, who is this voice? Who is
oh yeah.
And
oh
Parker
my gosh.
too. Parker too. I'm
The first two. You'll know. I even sing a little bit, and oh, it's so funny. So the first two were released, and then they picked up the rest to complete the season. So we've made 12 so far. And then I think those will all come out on YouTube, and Titmouse is producing that. It's been a couple years actually, of just like whole new worlds and learning experience.
It's so strange about how entertainment is changing. It's changing in such a interesting and dramatic
and quickly, like very quickly. And in a beautiful way, everybody can be their own creator and creatives. There's a space now for a lot of that, but keeping up with it is also awesome.
I know. So true. So fun.
Yeah. And then my doggy Linus, my dog Peanut, passed away in 2021. And I've had so many dogs, and even it was rare that I didn't have multiple dogs at a time. Peanut and we had 9 years together, and it was such a sudden thing, and it was still in the pandemic. I mean, 2021, we were coming out of it a little bit, but it took me a minute. My whole life changed, and I moved, and it was just a lot was happening at the time. And so this last year just felt open again to I've always been open to it, but more, okay, I've never forced, especially in the world of like animals and pets and whatever, they've all just shown up in a way. It's, oh, we found this stray. And I'm like, all right, I'll take her. So I had never really gone down the road of looking for a dog. It just showed up. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm open. My heart is open, and I feel like I'm ready. And I guess I'll just see how this shows up. And I had gone to a couple of events, like doggy events, Best Friends Animal Society, did an event for them. I had some travel coming up. I just didn't feel sure yet, I guess. Maybe that was it. And I saw this video on Instagram. My friend Hillary runs a Purposeful Rescue. They're amazing. They pull a lot of the medical needs and seniors and whatever from shelters. Love her and love what she does. Her name is Hillary Resin. And I saw this dog, and she posted this video on her Instagram, and I just saw his face, and I was like, oh, that's my dog. I don't know how I know, but I just know that's my dog. But I was traveling for the holidays a little. And so I went and I met him. I was like, yeah, this is my dog, but he needed surgery. I was going to travel. So I went on my travels. He had his surgery, and I picked him up from surgery on Christmas Eve. That was his adoption day. But before that, in the week leading up to adopting him and filling out everything, it took me, like, I kept talking to Peanut, because that's what I do. I was like, all right, Peanut, is this who you're sending? Is he the one? Is he like, I think so. I'll take any signs. I believe in that. So when I went to sign the adoption papers, I said like a little prayer that was just like, all right, I feel like he's mine. I'm going forward. I'm saying yes. And anything you want to send my way, Peanut, is like a blessing or a sign. Feel free, but I'm going to do it. And I woke up the next morning to all of his info. So like his shelter records, because I had signed the adoption papers, they were turning everything over to me. And I saw that his day of intake at the shelter was December 9th, 2023, which was the 2-year anniversary of Peanut passing. She passed on December 9th, 2021.
Wow.
They didn't know how old he was, but they guessed he was 2 years. So they gave him a birth date of December 2021. Yeah.
Oh.
So I literally feel like he was,
so
that was, I have my prayers and things that I do, but that for me, it was like, okay, Peanut, I got it. Not that I needed any more reassurance. Like I knew he was my dog, but it just added this whole other part to it that was Peanut being like,
I love it. And the universe does send us things, I believe.
It does.
It's a mixture of universe and trusting our instincts and all the things.
Absolutely. And that was like, I feel like that was one of those moments which I was thinking about you because I was like, you're a doer. You might have the idea or you might think about an idea, but you will do it. Like you are a doer. And I'm trying in my life to be less thinking, more doing, because I can think myself into analysis paralysis, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think about you like that. And that's a perfect example of something I was thinking this year of, I want this to be the year of doing. And because I feel like when you do make the decision, as you just said, trusting your instincts, when you actually say yes or no, or I don't know, I'm just going to jump off the cliff. I'm going to see what's here, that there is like a universe. There is usually a rushing in of something that shows up that's yes, because even if it's a no, that I feel like also shows up.
I'm so glad you said that too, because no is also
and
like
you
something
can
amazing can happen
course.
because you said no to something and yes to something else.
1,000%. But I feel like when you stay, like I have a tendency to like overthink, or I'll let the fear come in of, can I do this? Am I up for this? This is all so new to me. And I can stay in that mode for too long, like to a place like Maggie, just make the decision and you'll know. And if it is no, you'll know support for that right away, or you'll know
and
that doesn't feel right.
And you can stop.
And change direction, course correct, pivot. Change your mind. It's all there.
It's okay too, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in thinking, oh, I said I was going to do this and then everyone's going to think about it or know that I didn't do it or know that I'm not doing it. No one really, I mean, they care, but they don't.
They're doing them.
It's not like, exactly. Yeah. They're thinking about themselves and what they're doing.
And so, we think that people are like judging us or analyzing us or all those things. No, everybody's in their world just getting through their day. The only person it hurts is us if we're holding off on something. But Linus to me was like, the other day I was thinking about my overthinking a little bit, and I thought about Linus and I was like, oh, that was a decision I made. That was a decision that I just said, you know what, I'm going to say yes. But the universe showed up to be like, oh, and just in case you weren't clear, here.
Oh, I love it. And Linus can be a reminder to say yes, because you see Linus every day.
Those were my like year of yes and year of doing. I would say it started off year of yes, 2024. It's year of yes. That's what I mean. The spaghetti, like all of it is just, okay, lots of seeds have been planted. Let's see where it's going to grow.
I think with technology has put us all in a bit of that position, because there's so many new platforms and new tech apps and AI, and it's going to be, I think we're in it with spaghetti for a little while. But when you do make a decision, you go down a road. A little less spaghetti on the wall once the decision is made.
I know, it's my new word. This is just like in the last couple of weeks. It's just funny we're talking about that because you're such a great example, I think, of that, of doing. And no matter what, it'll pan out, or maybe it won't, but you'll have all the information then. If you don't take the step, I can get like overwhelmed. I'll think of step 30 and it'll make me scared to take step 1.
Magic happens when we focus on the part of ourselves and our business that brings us joy. What is one thing that you do? We talk a lot about business and a lot about work and a lot about all the things, but what do you do to make sure that you're finding and living your joy?
Linus is a huge part of that, my dog, because he always brings me back to myself. They force you, I feel like animals, to be present. because they almost don't respond and they're unconditional love. So that would be like a thing. Like I can almost just look at him and I feel reconnected with me. But it's funny when you said it, I was thinking of I could go to nature. I do a lot of outdoors, but painting is I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if it's any good, but it's something I just do for me. I'll throw a drop cloth down. I will roll the paints out. And for some reason, it just makes me feel creative, connected, and it's really not for anybody else. It's just for me. So that's another.
I love that so much. Someone said to me one time that they write down lists and sometimes they just scribble words and notes, and they like to do that because it's not structured. Like we think of so much of our life as so structured. And I love that you say you do it for you.
Yeah, it actually started. A friend of mine left me a paint set one day because I was like, I think I would enjoy that. And then it turned into a whole other thing, honestly, after Peanut died. And it was sudden and it was traumatic. It was just a lot. And I needed some place to channel it. I don't know if I've told anybody this, but I started finger painting almost, like laying out the paint and just feeling it in my hands. And that was just a way for me to deal with my grief. So in a way, that non-structure thing, it's really, I think, important where we can feel free in something.
Parker, I had to make her an art table in the garage because when she was 5 and 6, glitter and everything was coming out of her room. So she goes into the garage. It's interesting because when you were talking about it, it made me think of her. She creates these crazy things. And for a while, she was like, you can't throw that trash away. Like I would look down and I was like, I'm sure I threw that away. And somehow it would end up on her art table and she would just make this crazy art. But I see why you started finger painting and things like that, because I'm not an artist. I wouldn't know what to do with the paint. And I think when you're trying to figure it out, that seems like a normal way. What is this? And
what does it feel like?
To do with it? And
what does it do when I do this? Or what does it do? I love that about Parker because
I'll send you a picture. Her mind just thinks in such a different way than mine does, in a good way. Just don't paint the car.
I love that. It's almost like that's her me time. That's her her Parker's time. That's really sweet. I love that. Maybe I should interview Parker on it.
I know, she would love that.
I think that just gave me like a spark. It's like when you get that spark of something, it's, I would love to talk to her.
And keep the art going. Just do whatever. I love that you did whatever you wanted with your fingers because that's what she goes out and does whatever. She doesn't think about it. And she's taping and cutting. It's not like she's watching a video and trying to draw this perfect thing. It's like she's just making anything that she decides she wants to make.
There's no judgment.
How often in life do we do that?
Exactly. Just to be free in our creativity without any, as your friend said, structure or judgment or anything. It's just, that's really cool. I love that she discovered that too about herself. I love all of it. Oh my God. I want to
talk to you. We could talk forever. And I bet we have a million ideas that we could probably develop.
Which we should. We should.
Seriously.
Let's have dinner. But let's have a strategy sesh or something too.
Yeah, I would love that.
I'm serious. Yeah.
Know, me too.
Yeah. I love this podcast.
Share with us how and where we can find you and all of the fun and amazing things that you're doing.
At The Psychologist Are In is our Instagram. I'm Mags Lawson on Instagram, and I have Me Time with Maggie. That's the handle on Instagram. And for PsychCon and all of that, there will be the links on the Instagram that take you to all of the upcoming live shows and everything. And at Tiger Francis, which is the animal foundation as well.
Thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me at hello@shebuiltit.com on our She Built It website or at She Built It on social. Thank you to my editor, Rich Streffolino, who always makes us sound good. Until next time, let nothing stop you from experiencing the life and business that you crave.